Hi,
Let's talk
Uche.
about market performance so far. Now, investors seem to have closed shop so far this year. They've taken positions, activity very low. What is your take on what we're seeing on the market right now? And certainly, what are you advising your clients right now? Are you advising them to adopt a similar stance?
Well, no, I wouldn't. But that's not to say that that isn't the way the brokers are going right now.
Right.
It's probably just how many more days to the end of the year, and I actually think activities are going to be much slower as we move towards the Christmas period, and pretty slow when we go between Christmas and New Year. But then again, as usual. If there's any opportunity to take a position in one of the more promising stocks for corporate action for year end, I don't think any broker will pass up that opportunity. We're seeing the prices of the likes of Guinness inching up, essentially because there's still demand for those stocks, and whatever was put on the market was cleared. So clearly that's one stock that's expected to have some corporate action. And maybe for those persons who are looking for liquidity in the likes of Nigerian breweries, which is in fact a highly liquid stock, perhaps there was a bit too much supply on the market today, which is why we saw that dip.
What about the banking sector, Adeboyega? Certainly, we're not seeing much in terms of price movements, but in terms of volumes, we're still seeing high volumes. In fact, the top-tier banks sort of dominating volumes right now. What is your take on how that sector is performing? I mean, are investors still hungry for those banking stocks, of course, as they're anticipating some of those corporate actions towards the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe that whatever trades we find on the main banks that tend to be frequently traded are more or less negotiated transactions, probably negotiated outside the floor and then executed on the floor. And I say that because we're all pretty much aware the year end is December 31st for all the banks in the country. And the first 3 quarters have been an indication of what kind of results are going to be posted for year end. And what we're seeing is that people do want to take positions right now. That's why we don't see too much in terms of price movement, but we will see some volume specifically moving, from one point to another.
Right, and I mean, I must mention one sector that, of course, we've seen more activity in this year so far is the insurance sector. Talking to you earlier, Adeboyega, you mentioned that we hear that a company will be seeing a 1.5 billion naira private placement this month. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, essentially, I've always said that that's a sector where there's a great potential, where there's a lot that can happen. And indications we have on a no-name basis, there's a likely transaction that will close before the end of the year. And it simply tells that someone is taking a key position in an insurance company. And if you think about it, in the past 6 months, we've seen some interesting activity there. There have been 1 or 2 mergers, and a few of them are starting to go past the 50 kobo par value price, at which they've been stocked for about a year now. So the prospects are there, and I think people are beginning to look in there.
Right. Well, let's talk about the recent forbearance package, Boyega, that was announced by the Minister of Finance yesterday. And certainly talking to the brokers this morning, they didn't seem so excited about it. I'd love to get your take on it. I mean, 84 stockbroking firms receiving about 22.6 billion naira. What is your take? And certainly some of those fees that she's planning to cut and taxes that she's planning to cut. How do you feel about it, Boyega?
Well, okay, the forbearances are in 2 parts, or actually they're actually 2 measures to stimulate the market. The first is the forbearance, and the second are the cuts in terms of VAT and stamp duties on transactions. First, with respect to the forbearances, 84 stockbrokers, that may sound like quite a figure, but in terms of the number of stockbrokers we have and the impact of the margin loan losses on the industry itself, you can be pretty sure that that's not going to go too far. There were all kinds of estimates being bandied around as to the actual amount of the margin loan loss. The banking industry have taken a hit on that. The stockbrokers too need to take their hit. They need to take the medicine. It's bad, but it's necessary to straighten out the market. I think the forbearances are good. I don't see those 6 measures listed as sanctions as such. I think they're more like restrictions. There are codes of discipline necessary for those who have taken the forbearance. They're not permanent. They're just there for 2-3 years of activity. And when business turns around, that's good. But for the brokers who do not qualify amongst those 84, certainly it's not yet Uhuru, as the statement goes. And I do hope at some point in time the authorities will tend to look at those brokers too, so that there can be as much a level playing field in the industry as possible.
Right, again. And Cindy, thanks so much for your take, but I'd love to get your outlook for the market this week. Do you think we're going to see a continued flat performance, continued slow activity on the market?
Well, there's no indication of anything to give us a significant uptick. We've had two major pronouncements in the last half of this year, the forbearances which came out yesterday, and of course the market makers being put on the market. The impacts, and again, also we had the lifting of the percentage rise. So the impact of those three things have not been too significant. I don't see what else is going to happen before the end of the year. I think we're probably just going to coast along as we are doing now.